Hello and welcome. The British business groups are going to convene for their national convention in Mumbai in the month of September. We're going to find out what the British business groups mean, what are they going to be doing, and what this convention, which is unique and special in some ways, is about. Joining me now to discuss that is Alan Rosling, who's spearheading the effort this year, also the past chairman of the BBG Mumbai, as well as the chairman of Kiran Energy, a well-known solar energy company. Alan, thank you very much for joining us. So first question, what does the BBG initiative mean?
The British business groups are voluntary organizations across not just India but other countries too, but in India in about 6 of the metro cities. In Bombay we've been in existence since '96, and this is the 3rd time that the British business groups across India have met on a national basis. So Chennai last year, Goa the year before. Right. But this year in Bombay, the 21st of September at the Taj in Bombay, we're going to put together a very ambitious program where our members from across India will be joined from speakers from London, from Delhi and from elsewhere to have a very intensive and hopefully a lot of fun, but a very intensive day talking about where the relationship, the business relationship between the UK on the one hand and India on the other is today. Mm-hmm. It's a very deep, complicated, long-standing relationship, but also one in which there is lots more that should and could be done.
Right.
So we want to focus the meeting on very practical steps of what could we do as business people and what could we do with our friends in both governments to improve and deepen the trade and investment relationship between the UK and India.
Right. Right. So you're calling it Juggling, which in Hindi or whatever means really working in unison, or two. I mean, usually a musical term, 2 instruments playing together, or 2 different kinds of instruments trying to achieve some harmony. So right. How does this analogy play out here?
From the Sanskrit, Juggling means entwined twins.
Yes.
So conjoined twins, and I think that's a very good way of thinking about the relationship between the UK and India, because we are conjoined twins for the last 350 years.
Right.
But Juggling, as you say, in music is a very complicated, unscripted, organic duet between 2 instruments. And I think again that illustrates the relationship. It is evolving, it is two-way, it is a discourse between 2 instruments that entwine, that sometimes have tension, sometimes are joyful, and sometimes there are issues. So that's the theme we've chosen for the conference. So we want to suggest that what we have already is something very special, but we can do more to build a relationship which right. is unique, very deep, and multifaceted.
Right. So what are the specific areas that you're going to be looking at in the context of where we are as a country, or as a global economy for that right. matter, because we're talking about 2 different players in the global economy.
Right. Well, I think there are 2 parts to it. One is to talk about the UK-India business relationship overall. So we've invited the trade minister from each country, so Stephen Green from the UK and Anand Sharma from Delhi, and other ministers will be there as well, Shashi Tharoor, for example. So, and with business leaders and other representatives, UKTI and USIBC and other organizations we work with, we'll be talking about where is the relationship now. But then, secondly, we'll be doing a deep dive into 6 sectors where we all believe there's a much more to be done. And these
give us an example.
Well, financial services, where the UK is very strong. Already we have some of our banks that are very deeply present in India, but we could do a lot more in financial services. Defense and aerospace, where again the UK has been trading with India for a very long time, but the depth of the manufacturing and technical commitment from UK companies into India is not perhaps what it could have been, and equally there's no reason why India cannot be a major exporter of defense equipment and IT and security systems to the UK.
Right.
So it is very much a 2-way race. It's not yeah. just the UK trying to invest in India, yeah. it is both ways.
Right.
And we'll also be talking about engineering, about retailing, very controversial subject. My own sector, which is infrastructure. So why is it that, other than say Vodafone, maybe BP in oil and gas, very few British companies have invested in India? And then if you look at the UK, our airport is run by the Spanish, the Chinese are invested in our water system in London. Where are the Indian investors into UK infrastructure? Where are the big opportunities in a number of sectors as well?
Right. So what's the answer to that question? And I'll come to the UK-India corridor in a moment.
Well, there's no single answer.
Right.
In many ways, let's start with a sector where I think we can do a lot, which is very immediate, which is education. So 50 years ago, if you were a smart Indian, you wanted to go to the UK for education, including our Honourable Prime Minister, who went to my university of Cambridge. Now, many of my friends' kids want to go to America. So we have world-class universities, relatively compared to our position in the world, far more world-class universities than one might think. But we're not attracting enough Indian talent. And those world-class universities would like to do more here in India. So we have a very strong panel at the conference, including the chancellors or the vice chancellors of 4 UK universities and the chancellor of an Indian university. So we can do a lot more in that educational space. So I think that if you start with young people, if you start with the research, if you start with innovation, then you can do a lot more on top of that.
Right. So education is one where I think people could see the corridor working sort of in a manner that's very visible. What is the one other area that you feel this conference should focus on in terms of maybe time spent or in terms of discussions had, which should sort of come out with something tangible or which should lead to something tangible?
Well, I think the other sector where I mentioned earlier on, where I think immediately we can do more is defence and aerospace, where the UK defence budget is going to shrink. So that means that we want to get more for less money. So using India as a partner could potentially increase the productivity and reduce the cost of procuring the sort of equipment and support that our defence forces will require. Equally, India has become the largest purchaser of defence equipment cross-border in the world. So it imports more than anybody else. So, and if you're an American company, you are restricted in terms of technology transfer to a partner because of US law. So in terms of a trusted long-term partner who would be in a position to transfer technology and to do things in a deeper way, to run programs together, to do research together, to jointly manufacture a product or to manufacture for export, India and the UK are natural partners in defence and aerospace.
So when we talk about this corridor, so we've talked about some of the hard issues. What are the soft issues that interest you and why you feel that this corridor can deliver more than it can, or it is?
The relationship is unique in that sense, in a cultural sense and a social sense.
Yeah.
You think of the number of Indians, of people of Indian origin who are UK citizens or live in the UK, and equally, like myself, long-standing Brits who've lived in India. But now we've got a new phenomenon, which is NRIs who are Brits who are coming back to India, including some Bollywood stars and writers and artists. So we will have a very interesting session, I hope it'll be very interesting, chaired by Razia Iqbal, where we take some very prominent people from both sides, from Brits living in India, Indians, people of Indian origin who are British, and talk about the social and cultural dimension, the confluence between our two countries, which goes way beyond business, goes into language and culture and family and food and art and literature. So we'll have Sunil Kulnani from King's in London.
The Idea of India.
The Idea of Indian, and his wife Catherine Boo, who wrote a fascinating book about the slums of Bombay. Willie Dalrymple, who's lived in Delhi for getting on 20 years now and has written some fantastic things about the subcontinent and about the relationship historically between the UK and India.
Right. So last question. So what does this whole thing mean to you? I mean, you yourself are a good example of someone who's traversed this corridor and lived here, worked here, and you seem to migrate between both worlds or have feet on both worlds and move quite seamlessly. So tell us about your own experience.
I think India, from a pure business point of view, is one of the biggest opportunities that there is. Clearly, the size of the country, the growth opportunity, the fact it is relatively earlier in its stage, its journey of development than compared to China or even Brazil or South Africa. And it is a country in which the UK obviously has a preferred position because of we start with many British companies here, we start with a common language, we start with the educational trade in both ways. And for a Brit, it's a very easy country because it feels familiar to us. And then from a much more personal point of view, beyond business, it's just the most fantastic country in which to live, to work, to bring up family, to travel. So India is a lifetime commitment, a journey which goes on from when you first discover it until the moment where you shuffle off to do something else upstairs.
Right. So what's the one thing that you would tell people who are visiting as part of this delegation, or even otherwise, that you think they should do if they come to Mumbai or some other part of India, or the one memory that they should sort of look out for?
Well, Indian hospitality is unique, and we will try at the conference to demonstrate that in the food and the music and the drink and the style of the conference. Because as a Brit coming to India, or anyone coming to India, the welcome you receive is par none.
Alan, thank you very much for speaking with us.